My name's Helen, people also call me Tigger, and I'm married to Mark, intensive care paramedic. Mark and I have got 2 kids. Maya is the eldest and Talia's just turned 12, and they're great kids. We have a really good time. We spend a lot of time together as a family. Yeah, we enjoy hanging out.
Having a dad that works at the ambulance service is really exciting and engaging and cool because he brings stuff to school and he brings stuff home, and I know that he's helping people. My dad is he's quite energetic a lot of the times. He's really fun to be around. Whenever you meet him, you can tell that he's like a really nice guy. He likes to talk about a lot of things a lot of the time.
Mark's a really creative guy. He's a very determined person, so the best way to get Mark to do something is to tell him that he can't do it, and then he'll go hell for leather to try and prove you wrong. So it's a real strength of his. He's also a really caring person, and people matter to him, so he'll spend time with people at work, and he's a really good mentor, so that's a real strength of his.
I remember the job where I first fell over inside. We got called to a guy, it was a shooting, and that can mean a number of things, but it was a shooting. I remember the house, I remember going to the table where he'd written a note to his daughter, and something inside me snapped. I remember going back to station and withdrawing, and I remember burying it. And I survived for another 6 or 7 years, I would say. Interestingly, my wife said on a number of occasions something was wrong, but I couldn't see or hear that.
When Dad was having a hard time at work, he usually isolated himself in his study and kind of was a lot more snappier, and we had to have a lot of patience with him a lot of the time.
When Mark was at his worst, it was pretty tough. PTSD as an injury, I think, makes you really self-protect. Everything was about him and what he needed and how he felt. And so I think what we saw was that little things that would have been a frustration or a challenge, he wasn't able to react to in a normal way. Everything was amplified. So it felt like everything that happened he was overreacting to. So it would have only taken a little frustration or situation or to really make him more than frustrated, quite angry. So we saw a lot of anger and a lot of his inability to deal with his frustrations.
I really didn't see him that much. He was very distant whenever he came out his study, and it was quite hard for him, I think. It was a bit sad. I kind of got a bit stressed at times. From
a family perspective, I think what helps most was actually that in the end there was some really, really tough love. We had several conversations about whether Mark needed to move out for a bit, where I said, look, I can't deal with this, level of negativity all the time, and it's affecting the kids, and it was difficult. And I think when we first talked about that, I think that was a big shock to him, because we generally have a great relationship. We're good friends. We love spending time together. So to suggest that he actually needed to go somewhere else was quite a big shock. And I think in the end that was probably the push that was needed to get him to really realise how serious things had got and how bad it was. So yeah, it was a rubbish time. It was a really difficult time. But in the end, I think that was what pushed him towards getting some help. The real turning point for Mark was that he found a psychologist that he really got on with, that really worked for him. And it was the fact that because she worked through some of the stuff that he'd been through, and in a lot of detail. I mean, they went back through jobs that had been a real challenge, and it wasn't an easy exercise in itself, seeing a psychologist. It was hard work, I think, for him. And he was kind of a bit tense before me sessions and found that difficult. But I think what happened there was that she gave him tools to be able to work through stuff and deal with stuff, and strategies that he could use.
When Dad finally started seeing someone, he became a lot more familiar, and he started to be the person I knew.
A lot of people think that seeing somebody is just talking to somebody or just spilling your guts about stuff that they don't understand and they're never going to understand, and what's the point? But actually, it was the fact that he's now got strategies that he can use, and that's what made a huge difference. He's back, and I never thought we'd get there, to be honest. I didn't think that there was a point where he'd be back at work, and we talked about what we'd do, and if he'd come and work with me, he talked about that being a possibility, that he could do that and we could set up a business, and it was always, there was a lot of talk about the fact that he wouldn't be going back to work. So to get to this point and for him to be well enough to be back at work and enjoying it is huge. For Mark, the real support in St John, a lot of it came from colleagues. He was really open about his PTSD right from the get-go, and just had so much support from colleagues. But also his station manager was great, and the guys at New Plymouth were really supportive and really helpful. And I just think the more we have these conversations, the more we talk about this stuff, the better that will get. It becomes less of something that you want to hide away, and something that's just almost becomes a potential part of the job that once we know what we're dealing with, it's more easy to work through. So now when Mark goes out on shift, I know that he's got tools that he can use if something is really hairy, or if he has difficult jobs or upsetting jobs. So it's easier because I know that he's got those resources to use. And also, another big part that's easier is the fact that he's positive about it. It's much easier to wave someone off when they're looking forward to work or happy about going to work, rather than when you can see that they're really struggling. That makes it really difficult. I think I'd say to the family of new recruits who are coming into the ambulance service, just be aware and look out for stuff. And I think for Mark, we saw a lot of changes in who he is, in his personality, that you can look out for. You can see if somebody's wanting to spend more time on their own, or is overreacting to things, or is behaving differently. So I think and talking is a huge deal right at the beginning, in order to not end up being damaged. And for some people it's hard, so encouraging people to talk, not in detail but how they feel about stuff, that can really help. I'd say a PTSD injury doesn't change you forever. It's something that you wear for a while, and it doesn't have to become who you are. It's a coat that can be taken off. So I think that's a fear for a lot of people, that the person that they love has become somebody totally different. But it doesn't have to be like that. So I'd say the positive thing as you move through PTSD, and it can be moved through. And I don't know if you ever totally get over everything, but you certainly learn how to deal with it. But it doesn't have to become who you are. It's an injury, and injuries can, there can be healing.